Hi to everyone here and around the world as New Year's 2025 has begun. The fiery apocalypse in Southern California is so nightmarish and tragic. Before the fires began, I was enjoying Christmas holidays in Philadelphia with my daughter Laura, my 10-year-old granddaughter Hannah, and son-in-law John Mead. On Monday, December 16th, Laura and I were picking Hannah up at her local grade school. The sun had set, and both of us at the same time yelled out, "Look!" We were both pointing at the same strange object in the sky that had glowing patches of red and white light on what appeared to be a strange rectangular-shaped aerial object. It was moving on a path horizontal to the treetops below, when it suddenly reversed direction without stopping. The glowing red and white object just instantly changed from moving forward to backward, and then backward to forward, not at all like a helicopter or fixed-wing plane. I tried to get my cell phone focused on it, but the odd drone disappeared in the distance behind a tree. That same night of December 16, 2024, ABC News headline, quote, "Drone Mystery, Communities on Edge Over Deepening Drone Mystery That Deepens as Lawmakers Demand Answers." According to Chief of Police for New Jersey's borough of Florham Park, quote, "Water reservoirs, electric transmission lines, rail stations, police departments, and military installations have all had the UFOs roaming above them in recent weeks," close quote. But instead of answers for lawmakers, suddenly there were fewer drone reports, as if someone had control over what was appearing in the skies and threw an off switch. So many people had been talking about seeing drones, some as large as cars like this photo. So why aren't people still looking at the sky and seeing drones? Where did all the drones suddenly go when the Pentagon and Congress became agitated? Illustration of planetary alignment beginning in mid-January of 2025 is coming that has not been seen for about 100 years. It is a rare planetary alignment of 6 planets beginning next week on January 21st, 2025. And that's when Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Venus, and Saturn, all at the same time in Earth's night sky, will be lined up like this by Star Walk. And then it will happen again on February 28th, 2025, with 7 planets in the sky at once: Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Venus, Neptune, Mercury, and Saturn. Do those 7 other planets in our solar system have other life forms beyond Earth? Well, government whistleblowers say there are many different life forms throughout this universe. One scientist who says, yes, there is other life on Earth, Mars, and beyond, is John Brandenburg, PhD, astrophysicist who wrote this 2015 groundbreaking book, Death on Mars, The Discovery of a Planetary Nuclear Massacre. And only about 2 weeks ago, on January 4th, 2025, John Brandenburg, PhD, astrophysicist, spoke at Tim Ventura's APEC Advanced Propulsion Exploration Conference on January 4th, 2025, about proof of life elsewhere in the universe. Scientists such as NASA's Richard Hoover, a couple of decades ago, proposed microfossils inside samples of meteorites could be proof of life from outer space. This week, I talked with Dr. John Brandenburg about that proof of life elsewhere in the universe.
We now have proof of life elsewhere in the stars, and that proof is in the Australian outback and consists of fossil life. It's in a place called Craton. It's a geologic body of rock, and it is 3.5 billion years old.
Wow. And the Earth is supposed to be about 4 billion years old, right?
The Earth happened about 4.5 billion years old, but it didn't cool off till after 4 billion on an ancient seashore. That life began as soon as there was a liquid ocean on Earth. As soon as the Earth had cooled enough to have liquid water, it had life in it, and the life was quite sophisticated. Life can appear in very primitive forms like a virus, which is just a loop of DNA with no cell walls or anything like this. But the simplest bacteria is very complex. It has DNA. It has RNA, which is a related nucleic acid that the DNA transfers information to RNA. The RNA then transfers that to what are called mitochondria in cells that then produce enzymes. And the enzymes are the gears of the great life machine. The DNA and RNA are programming language of the machinery, but the real machinery is done by enzymes, incredibly complicated protein molecules. They're three-dimensional. They're folded together, and they take molecules of other chemicals and make sure that they combine in certain ways to give the biological processes of life. Even an individual cell is very complex. The particular cells, microfossils they found in the Australian outback in this body of rock that used to be an ancient shoreline, has cell walls, the inner workings of a cell, all sorts of what are called organelles, parts of the cell that are doing different functions.
NASA scientist Richard Hoover did scanning electron microscope studies in 2004 of these particular microfossils, blue-green algae, on the right, found in Murchison, Australia outback rock, where there had been an ancient watery shoreline. The microfossils have cell walls and what are called organelles that are specialized structures within living cells on Earth.
This is like somebody saying, oh, I've invented writing and I've invented paper, and then they hand you the works of Shakespeare.
With that kind of complexity, all the way back to almost the beginning of the planet's existence, how do you think that's possible? What is it that would be sustaining that much life on Earth 3.5 billion years ago?
I believe the only logical answer to this is that life arrived as spores from space, already sophisticated life. The universe is 13 billion years old. In fact, this galaxy is 13 billion years past before the Earth was even born. And then Earth had no time to develop sophisticated life. And this is sophisticated, complicated living life. These bacteria, they're called cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, they're around right now, making these same kind of fossil formations. These things could not have developed in the brief time available between the Earth cooling off from being seas of molten lava with volcanoes and things crashing into it from space all the time, to finally things calming down and getting a liquid water ocean, and then suddenly sophisticated life in it. There was no time for sophisticated life to develop. Let me put it this way. As a scientist, you look at probabilities. You say, okay, how many times you have to roll the dice to get the first primitive roll of the dice was blue-green algae. You can't explain this in terms of spontaneously generating life from the primordial soup. The primordial soup was barely cooled off when this stuff formed.
And John, is your implication that this early blue-green algae probably was introduced to Earth by extraterrestrials that already existed on this planet and coming and going from other solar systems?
That's very possible. It's very possible. The blue-green algae was on the boots of the first being walking around in a spacesuit on the Earth. But we also know that spores exist in the atmosphere, and they go all the way out into space, and they come down from space. Space dust constantly falls onto the Earth from space, and some of that contains spores that then can produce things like blue-green algae. So we know that process exists. They found living cells, or rather hibernating cells, on the surface of the space station windows. The ISS, our big space station that's flying around the Earth all the time.
And they found blue-green algae on the surface of that?
There's varieties of bacteria that can tolerate vacuum, radiation, being completely dried out, and then come back alive whenever they get wet. And it was bacteria of that type that was on the outside of the space station, which is way up in orbit in outer space. Once we realized that the Earth is just a fairly new item in the galaxy is 13 billion years old. Earth is only 4.5 billion years old. So that means there's almost 10 billion years of time for life to evolve and spread and form intelligence before the Earth was even born. Now, the objects we find on Mars, I have never had anyone approach me from any organization involving the government and told me this is related to the Phoenicians or Sumerians. What was obvious to me is that the face and the pyramid nearby it resemble very much the pyramids complex, the Sphinx and the pyramid complex at Giza in Egypt. And Schock has said that is a very ancient, much older than people imagine it to be. And also the face in the helmet resembles very much carvings by the Olmec, Native Americans in Old Mexico. So I was very aware that things that look very similar to objects we found on Mars, archaeological objects, also occurred on Earth. Now, one of the things I try to do is make sure that I try to get as much knowledge as possible of mainstream science concerning Mars. And basically, the time when Mars was like Earth, having an ocean, and I was the one who discovered the ocean. You can see that at Wikipedia in reference number 1 of Mars ocean theory. The time when Mars was like Earth, with a liquid ocean, where these objects were built along apparently the shoreline of that ancient ocean, probably predates the dinosaurs. And they depict very human faces. I mean, these don't look like lizards. They don't look like the Greys. They look like us. And anybody like us coming to Earth at the time when they were built on Mars, Earth was a very dangerous place for things like us. I doubt they would have ever tried to, even if they had the technology. The artifacts we find look like they're remains of a primitive civilization, Stone Age, Mayans, Old Kingdom Egypt, but we don't know. They could have had skyscrapers and they've all turned to dust, and all that's left is these giant pyramids and faces.
There are so many books that have been written by scholars of Anunnaki and Sumerian and Assyrian and all of the what we call ancient civilizations that left all of their languages carved in stone on Earth. Like Dr. Hardy has a book about the nuclear war on Mars. And you yourself have been the one who has contributed the most on the presence of enough radioactive material in categories that would support 2 hydrogen bombs on Mars. And therefore, it seems like we've got the pieces of the puzzle around us. And what we're talking about now, about ancient life, being found in blue-green algae on Earth could be on Mars because there was some going back and forth between Mars and Earth by the Anunnaki and other non-Homo sapiens for a very long time before my timeline has Homo sapien and Neanderthal emerging on the Earth at about the same time, 45,000 years ago.
Yes, we are part Neanderthal, so there was some intermarriage, but it looks like the two species did not get along, showing they are truly human. There was some limited intermarriage between the Cro-Magnon and the Neanderthal. So some of the Neanderthal genes actually still survive in the human race. And so they made love and war, apparently. But the Cro-Magnon basically came to dominate everything. They had much more advanced weapons in the archaeological sites they find. They were much more modern kind of humans in their weapons, their tool making, and things like that than the Neanderthal. So they survived, and the Neanderthal as a group kind of disappeared.
Over the last 45 years of my investigations, beginning with animal mutilations to the current day, that there is a list of extraterrestrial biological entities that make and use artificial intelligence in their interactions with planets, and that we are at that edge where the truth is the whole planet Earth should be told that we're not alone in this universe. We never have been alone in this universe, and there are probably dozens of different intelligences coming and going and have been for millions of years. And when you go to that large landscape, then the idea that blue-green algae would be found in places that might link to something in a distant past, isn't it fair to automatically go to the government is covering up the presence of a variety of different extraterrestrial entities and their artificial intelligences, and that their history might go back on this planet to where you started in Australia nearly 4 billion years ago, where they have found the blue-green algae?
Yes, I agree with everything you just said. The government, at this stage, there's a UFO cover-up, intelligent species flying around in spacecraft in the Earth's environment. But then there's also a Mars cover-up.
Right, there is.
They're covering up, of course, the dead civilization on Mars, and apparently it's the nuclear holocaust that destroyed it. So they have a UFO cover-up. They have apparently a lunar cover-up.
Yeah, it's true.
They also cover up involving meteorites that have been collected that they crack open, and they do scanning electron microscope pictures of the insides, and they have blue-green algae inside them. And these things are from outer space. So blue-green algae apparently is the most prolific form of life in the galaxy.
Based on current fossil evidence, cyanobacteria are considered to be among the oldest known life forms on Earth, with fossils found in rocks dating back around 3.5 billion years, making them a strong contender for the title of oldest life on Earth, although the exact first life remains a subject of ongoing research and mystery. However, it is important to note that the fossils we have may not represent what would be the absolute earliest life forms, because earlier microbes, wherever they are, might not have fossilized as well. And I want to say to Ian and the guys who work with me and all of you that it is good to be back live, and deep, deep prayers to California. And that tonight, Ian, I hope that you can ask the chat if anyone here tonight since December has seen or recorded any of the drones. What Laura, Hannah, and I saw on December 16th was really odd. And is there anyone in the chat who might personally or know someone who might have inside information about who or what is controlling the drones? I always honor requests for not using names, working in anonymity, but I am so provoked by what this is and why, as soon as there was a 24-hour intense focus on the drones in news and Congress and companies and people saying, we want answers, the drones seem to sort of disappear or decline. So what is the link? Why would that happen? It is truly a puzzle. And on that note, dear Ian, I turn it over to you to see if some of the questions that I've posed we could ask our viewers tonight. And I understand we are very close to going through 285,000 subscribers.
Linda, yes, welcome back to 2025. It's our first live show, and we welcome all of our audience all around the world who have joined us this evening. We've got a lot of people here, a lot of people in the chat, and we have a few questions for you already. And we're also, you mentioned about the drones. You're not the only one wondering why the drones have dropped off the media cycle.
And disappeared within the 24-hour period of all of those headlines and all of the news.
Yeah, well, Tim Burchett has actually stated on January the 8th, the drones are still out there and media, for whatever reason, is not covering it anymore. Well, I've been following the UFO news, and I do notice that it's not being reported so much, although there was a very favourable article written in The Hill, which was also exploring the ET hypothesis that The Hill suspects New Jersey drones could be UFOs, or at least some of them. So there is a strange disconnect. I myself am still receiving lots of reports of people who are seeing mysterious drones and balls of plasma, balls of light, strange objects which have been seen coming across over the ocean towards New Jersey and into Florida. So I know the reports are still coming in from people who are actually reporting to me and seeing them firsthand.
Well, I know from correspondences that I have gotten since we started doing Earthfiles that there are people who are working in agencies who are working to understand UFOs, ETs, all interactions on the planet and what's going on between various human contingencies, and that they have communicated with me either by proton mail or hard mail, places where they can control. But I have gotten some fascinating information, and I would like tonight to reinforce and encourage those of you who have knowledge and if you have documents, please try to contact me and I will honor anonymity. But I feel strongly that we are in a very, very fast-moving, perhaps threatening, dangerous time. And the more information that some of us have, maybe we will be able to help in some way. And this is, I was joking with friends at Christmas time. It was 45 years ago that I had my first phone call and went up to see Sheriff Tex Graves in Colorado on the bloodless, trackless animal mutilations. And now it's 45 years later. I've certainly covered a lot of ground. But the subject of other life, other intelligence in this vast universe, on our Earth, in our solar system, and beyond, is in many ways, right now, I feel, one of the most important subjects that anybody could be trying to understand and pay attention to. So on that note, Ian, ask or interact with the chat about anyone who does have information of a professional nature. Can they get a hold of me in a confidential way? Sometimes when
That's right.
yeah, sometimes when I have
Yes,
put
but,
out those requests, I really do get fascinating replies. Go ahead, Ian.
That's right. So if anyone here in the chat or following this podcast or YouTube channel read us later can give us any more information about their own direct involvement or experiences with any of this mysterious phenomena, please contact us at Earthfiles at earthfiles.com, and also you can contact me directly as well at Ian at earthfiles.com, and I'll send everything that I have to Linda. We've got a question here. Someone says, it's Nelson Armour. Do you think the drones are a mix of our reverse engineered and alien devices, or both?
To be very honest, what Laura and Hannah and I saw in Philadelphia, December 16th, it was so strange because we work in it with inertia and other things, and to see something do this without stopping and seeming to be a shape of a rectangle, nothing like planes, it made me feel intuitively that I was looking at something that was not human-made. But on the other hand, I think that since World War II, that when Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso wrote The Day After Roswell and described all of the layers and layers of cover-ups and his always trying to understand what the real truth was, it's always been a goal of mine in these 45 years to be alive when we started finally getting honest news, honest headlines, honest releases from the government about what is going on in our interactions with what I think clearly, without any question, are extraterrestrial other intelligences. And so the idea that right now, if you ask about drones and who would have made them, I feel that the possibility of collaboration between ETs and, let's say, our aerospace company could be one of the possibilities. And why is it that still, by 2025, Earth with 8 billion people are not being told the truth? It's my mantra question. Go ahead, Ian.
Okay, we got Flix in the chat tonight says, I tracked hundreds of UFOs during the Iraq invasion, actually anticlimactic, but they loitered for nearly 3 days. We'd like to hear more from you, please, Flix. If you can contact us directly, and we'd like to learn more about your experiences.
I've heard the same thing about Iran and Iraq being the target of special forces. And I have talked with one Navy SEAL, this goes back about 5 years ago, around 2020, a Navy SEAL who told me that he had been in some sort of a special intelligence operation in the Iran-Iraq area, and that he had seen with his own eyes, questioning what in the world did he need glasses, what was wrong, but coming out of a very sandy, reddish, like you're walking along in a path, and then suddenly it's like a bluff that goes up maybe 200 or 300 feet. And that coming out of it, through the wall of the dirt, he said they looked like, not like humans, they looked like something that had scales, like reptiles. And they seem to be transforming themselves in what they look like as they came out through the walls of this sort of hill cliff. And I've heard variations on that theme from people who served in Vietnam, and the idea that we have shape shifting as part of the landscape also fits into what people have said about the drones since October of 2024, when I think it was 16 or 17 nights that there were flyovers over Langley, the central headquarters of the Central Intelligence Agency in the United States, and that as of today, quite a long time later, that there is no solution, or no one has even been able to describe how could 16 or 17 drones fly over the really sensitive airspace above Langley, where the CIA has an operation. How did that happen? So I feel that we are kind of moving around a really important subject without understanding at the core, is it partly US collaborating with an extraterrestrial group such as the Nordics and the Tall Whites and some faction of Greys possibly, but not reptilians and not other Greys that are considered to be not collaborative. So at every turn, it's so complex, but because I have so many files and pieces of information, that when some of you do let me know what you yourself have real knowledge about, what you've seen yourself, it helps. It helps me continue to connect the dots on this enormous story that keeps on going without our ever being told the truth outside of the work like what I'm doing and others, trying to report as honestly as possible with the help of people in military, aerospace, medicine, and so forth, at a time where everyone I know, professionally or through you being abductees, everyone feels that there is something hugely critical about this moment in time-space. What is it? Okay, Ian.
Yeah, I think it is a very important time. We're in very interesting times, and I think it's probably a timely reminder as well to tell people that your upcoming conference appearance at Conscious Life Expo, the LAX Hilton, coming up in the first week in February. So I think I'm going to post the links up here, and we invite our audience, if you're able to come and see the presentations at Conscious Life Expo. We'll be posting the links for the tickets, and we'll also be pleased to meet you in person if you want to come up and speak to us.
Conscious Life Expo is always fun. It's in the LAX Hilton, so it means vertical. You're on different layers for different things. And it's especially fun because when the restaurants are open, they had closed them during COVID and there was a problem, but I think that they are opening up everything again. And it is so fun to go through a whole day, midday, evening, and then end up with people in a really sort of around the campfire talking about what people want to have somebody like me sit and hear what you have experienced, what you think, what you have encountered. And if there is a group of us, of 10 of us, it often can be one of the most fascinating discussions you will have in any given year, are some of the discussions at Conscious Life Expo. So I hope I will see many of you there, and that Ian and Eric are putting up the information for when, how, tickets, and everything. Thanks, Ian.
That's okay. Diana Nahigan says, can blue-green algae be toxic to humans? Should we be concerned?
What I have been reading about the whole big issue of this site, and I had just looking for it's fossils of cyanobacteria in sea carbonaceous meteorites, implications to life on comets Europa and Enceladus. I'm working on something about this. Don't have enough yet to do a report, but will. But I raised that title because there are so many facets. And part of one of the questions that I have been going through the last few days is cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, in certain stages, in certain environments, can it be dangerous? And apparently there's some people who think it could be and others who do not know or feel that there needs to be research. That's why the dialogues that we have on the Earthfiles YouTube channel, they're so valuable because I know what you are interested in and I'm already working in subjects around. And your questions help me to keep guiding in various subjects as I am working toward possibly doing a whole other fifth book finally. So Ian, I would say that there is no definitive statement about whether the cyanobacteria could hurt, but the questions are all there and they need more research, and especially if they're coming in on meteorites, and the meteorites, they open up and they're finding these fossils, is what they refer to them. It may be that they haven't had enough to come up with a definitive statement about cause and effect, but at the same time of what I'm reading, this is one of the questions that is being studied. Okay, Ian, more?
Yeah, Metal Wolf Reaper says, I think most meteorites are fragments of planet Tiamat, which was blown up and became the asteroid belt. If DNA matches anything on Earth or Mars, it has to be past the exploded planet. So you're looking at a connection there between the vicinity of Mars and the meteorites, etc.
Yeah, you've almost faded out in the grapefruit. And so speak into it louder.
Yeah, I just and this we had a comment from Metal Wolf Reaper says, I think most meteorites are fragments of planet Tiamat, which was blown up and became the asteroid belt. If the DNA matches anything on Earth or Mars, it has to be part of the exploded planet.
And you're talking about the Anunnaki, Sumerian time, and John Brandenburg has done that book, The Death on Mars, about there being evidence of what might be 2 hydrogen bombs exploded in the northern hemisphere over the Cydonia region of Mars, and that it may be that it was the Anunnaki because they apparently warred. But it is fascinating that there are several books that, and last year I think I interviewed Dr. Hardy, who she has a brilliant book about the wars in the Anunnaki and the violence that they used in terms of technologies, nothing like poor humble Homo sapien. And the fact that there was the green glassy trinitite that we would find, let's say, at the Trinity site in New Mexico where they set off the first atomic bomb. The silicon in the sand, it is a flash melt and it turns into this greenish glass. And they have found exactly that kind of greenish trinitite, they call it, in areas of the Middle East and India and that area. And if the Anunnaki were using atomic bombs, hydrogen bombs, that could explain what happened on Mars as well. Go ahead.
Okay. Pigpug214 says, I've been thinking about getting into this type of research, but honestly don't know where to begin. Well, I don't know where you are, Pigpug214, but you can begin your research wherever you are, as far as I'm concerned. Just read some books and watch the podcasts and look at going to some conferences and hearing firsthand from people. What do you advise, Linda?
Start with my books, An Alien Harvest and Glimpses of Other Realities, Volumes 1 and 2, and Mysterious Lights and Crop Circles. My first 3 books, they are very large, 8.5 by 11, 476 pages in one, 512 pages in another. And I wanted so much to have black and white and color photographs and documents and everything very high quality in those books. And I use them in my own research all the time and find how very important it is to go back to some years and some photos. And I'm getting a report today in 2025, and I either find something very similar going back 45 years or not. And if it is still bloodless, trackless, and that's what is happening with animals, then what is the goal, the accomplishment, the harvest? What is it over such a long period? And that's one of the huge values of having these books that have so many photographs and documents that are high quality, and you don't have any problem reading and getting a sense of what was happening half a century ago and what is now. You can compare to what is happening now on some of these facets, such as animal mutilations. In the spring, I have had some calls from some ranchers who say that they have seen what they call signals, that in the past years they began to associate the signals with the reoccurrence of bloodless, trackless animal mutilations. And so they're just letting me know that they are going to be very vigilant as we go to the spring and summer, and that it may be that it's going to be time for another cycle. If so, I will be covering it, and I am always trying to get information about who, what, and why. Okay, Ian.
I want to acknowledge some of our super chats this evening. Of course, we've got Moonbird back, so thank you very much, Moonbird. Also, Caroline Boyce is here in the chat. Thank you for your super chat. And Mike Basil is here, and it's also an opportunity to wish Mike Basil a happy birthday. It's his birthday today as well.
Happy birthday to any and all of you who have had another revolution around the sun, and may we all pray together that we will see this year be a lot more positive than we were feeling last year. Go for the positive. Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, and Linda, Little Bird tells me that you've got another revolution around the sun coming up this weekend as well, so wishing you a happy birthday for that one as well.
That's right. On January 20th, I will have been 83 revolutions around the sun. And my brother and I said the other day, that number didn't even exist in our minds as we grew up. But in a strange way, it is almost thrilling that everything I've been exposed to, all the million questions that I have, is that I really do think I am beginning to understand a little bit more about the real and profound nature of this universe as one universe made of what I think could be an infinite number, and that what is behind the creation of universes is what is linked to the strange mysteries having to do with UFOs and ETs, not only for decades, but for centuries on this planet. And that's another area I am trying very hard to learn more, and will do some more reporting. Okay, we have reached the 8:30 mark, but we started late because the constant problem and challenge I have with allergies I was having sneezing attacks, and that's why we started 10 or 15 minutes late. So I will throw it to my colleague Ian for a few more questions.
Okay, we've got several questions here. First of all, someone says, can you give a comment on the latest new whistleblower who came out tonight on News Nation? Well, we're still following this story, but it's interesting to see that new whistleblowers seem to be coming out all the time. And I've emailed you some more information this evening that about another whistleblower to come out as well, I think separate from this one. So these are very interesting times.
They are, and I have more new information from one of my very, very straightforward, detailed, I'll just say a source, that I'm going to be sharing some of that information at Conscious Life Expo. And any and all of you who are going to make that conference, I think that all of us would like to be able to cross-share information that we're getting from people that we know who are working professionally and can't talk straightforwardly in the conferences, but they can come physically. Los Angeles is a huge city with a tremendous amount of aerospace support. And so it is a way to bring together meetings that don't jeopardize anybody, is to come to a conference and make, in a noisy room, you make a connection, and that's happened several times to me in my career. And I think that we are getting to such a new point where there's going to be enough people on the planet who are beginning to say, well, I now know that my friend is telling the truth. I know that there are extraterrestrials. I know they're advanced craft. And that the government may lose the lead on this because humanity may be going forward on its own to finally opening this up, or some combination. So in the chats right now, Ian, is there any question that you're seeing coming from people that is sort of similar, like a theme?
Well, I'm tracking all sorts of comments as well as we go. I'm just looking for a comment about disclosure that I saw. I think it's important as well to say that at Conscious Life Expo, we're also going to have Danny Sheehan and Steve Bassett from the New Paradigm Institute. So they will obviously be updating us as well on the latest disclosure situation. Just looking for some comments in the chat as it's scrolling through at the moment. I think someone was saying about whether or not humanity itself can manage the disclosure, or whether we're going to be the biggest risk. Here it is. It's Yo Holmes. It was giving an answer to a previous one by Vitor about the biggest obstacle to disclosure is whether or not it's the government or the people.
Can you say that again more loudly?
Yeah, it was a question that was posed in the chat earlier. The question was, is the biggest obstacle to disclosure the people handling disclosure, or the government not allowing it?
Now,
I think the question is, will the population be the bigger resistance for disclosure?
Now I understand, and it is a valid question to ask. I just keep hoping that my fellow human beings are going to get tired of living on a planet in a system that is completely built on lack of truth. Oh, here's dear chocolate.
I just read here, it says, Victor Valido says, the veil of secrecy must be breached. I expect great resistance from those secret organizations.
And maybe we are at another revolutionary moment that isn't just finally telling the truth, that we're not alone in the universe, that they have been responsible for genetic manipulation of everyone from ancient humanoids up through Neanderthal to us. But there is this other huge issue about how any system, any entities govern themselves so that they can at least cooperate on a planet that helps everybody not to be held hostage by power brokers who don't care about anything but themselves. And somewhere it seems to me that we keep washing back and forth like that in a lot of places and systems. While I grew up thinking that the United States of America was the greatest nation, the greatest government, and we are beginning to learn that there are a lot of alternatives and there are a lot of problems. And is it possible that extraterrestrials, such as the tall whites, at least as they have been described, some people saying that they are spiritual and others saying they are very harsh and demanding, somewhere in the middle might be true, but nevertheless, the few people that I have been able to talk with firsthand, face to face, about the tall whites have included 3 people who have worked in an agency in one and an aerospace company in the others. Next to what they said was an extraterrestrial tall white. And when I ask, how do you interface, since humans are so dependent upon making noise to each other? And the answer was, no, they do a lot of things. They communicate telepathically. And that some people don't have any problem with it and other people do. But they use this one very interesting word, that the tall whites are very strict, S-T-R-I-C-T, strict. Apparently, what they say has to go, or if they make an agreement, or it's very strict. And you don't hear that word with any of the others, talking about the grays, the teals, the various non-humans. And I've said several times to these people who have been able to talk to me at a personal level, if you work next to them, if they communicate off and on with you telepathically, do you have any sense of how they are looking at you, Homo sapien? Do they find you irritating, slow, or is there something about humans that they watch and perhaps want? And one person said, I know what you're asking, and I would be afraid if I talked very long, but Linda, I think that we're dealing with some of the intelligences that go back to the earliest times and coming forward in the evolution of this planet. And they are the ones who said the tall whites are spiritual, but they are not kind, and they are strict. Now you put those pieces together. I think about it, I don't have any resolution from experience or from education by people who have worked with them. And if anyone listening right now has worked with them in a military or in aerospace or whatever, and you have any insights to character and why we're not introduced, if everything is positive and good for at least one group, why? Why now wouldn't we automatically be introduced? They might help this planet and humanity and the wonderful animal life forms to survive a period that might otherwise be destructive. It's such a confusing landscape. So I reach out tonight to those of you who may have firsthand knowledge, who may have heard some of the phrases that I have used tonight in your own context and work. And if you can feel comfortable in reaching out to me in hard mail or proton mail, I would very much like to see what some of you out there might have actual knowledge, perhaps concerning why the cycle of drone activity in the last, since October at the CIA up to now. A whole lot of other questions about the geophysical, geographical stress that humans are self-imposing or being imposed upon on this planet now. It seems like it's a harsh and difficult time everywhere. Why? Let's all go for the agape hug of recognizing fellow beings. I pray for that every day. And I'm so glad that so many of you send me the letters and the cards that you do. They mean a lot. And on that note tonight, I look forward to seeing you next week. And Ian and everybody, thank you. And I will look forward to seeing your questions and try to have even more answers next week.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white Settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC, and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.